Hello and welcome, Sparkmas here. Very excited to be showing off Blueprinter, my new bucket spigot plugin for Minecraft, which allows you to define the layout or blueprint of structures in your config file and then craft those layouts into placeable block items, which will build the building out right in front of your eyes when you place the item. If you are an OP user, you will also get a construction receipt, which allows you to do some cool things like make the building disappear and reappear. You can teleport to the structure, or you can even swap out some of the materials that it's made with. Okay, so let me show you where we're getting the code. It's at GitHub. Sparkmas is the account and Blueprinter is the project. If we take a look at the POM, you can see we're on version 1.0.0. Okay, so I think the quickest way, the best way to do this is to jump right into the server and show off some of the buildings that come by default in the config file, but you are encouraged to learn the system and define some of your own layouts and structures after you get the hang of it. So here you can see I have this area set up where we have the 5 structures that come with the plugin. We have the cobblestone house, the stone house, the fortress, the mine shaft, which actually is built downwards, and the gazebo. All these are really just meant to show off particular features. The cobblestone house is the most simple. It does have a little bit more complex of a material pattern than some of the others, but all the concepts are there in the others as well. Okay, so first things first, I do want to point out that the floor is exactly the same as the ceiling in all these structures. And I'll show you how that works in the config file. And some of them are allowed to replace blocks, some aren't. Like we said, the mineshaft builds down, others do not. And so like these first 3, cobblestone, stone, and obsidian, are not allowed to replace blocks. So if I try to place this down, it will not let me because it's too close to something else and it tells me where that conflict might be. Also, for all of them, you have to place them in a straight line in front of you. You cannot place them at an angle because we pay attention to orientation, and it's an easy way to figure that out if the person is standing in a straight line perpendicular to you know, the X and Z planes. Okay, so let's just plop this stone house down, the cobblestone house, and you can see it builds out right in front of me and I get that construction receipt. Let's go on to the next one. Again, all the potential for the material, like there is a strip defined here, but it just happens to be the same material, so you can't see it. Really the main thing to demo here is that the stone house requires loaded materials. So I can right click it and I can see it requires all of these materials, essentially every block that the house is built out of. This one is already loaded up, so we can just place it down and move on because there's not much more to demo. The obsidian fortress here is the same thing. We're just showing off a feature. This one is require materials in bag. So in order to place this, I have to have all the required materials in bag. I can right click it and I can see I need 213 obsidian while I have 320, so we have enough. So I'll be able to place this without a problem. Okay, so moving on, we have the mine shaft. This builds downwards, and you can see instead of like a polished stone in the middle of the ceiling and floor, I have some water, so you get a nice water elevator downwards, and some glowstones so you can see in the dark. And of course everything is glass, so if you run into any tunnels on the way down, you'll be able to see them. Okay, another thing is it's allowed to replace blocks. That's how it burrows into the ground. And one thing I wanted to do is not destroy things that are important to you. It will destroy any block that's there, so you know, be careful. You might build it through a thing of diamonds, but if there's any chests that happen to be in your way, like this one here has a diamond shovel in it, it will that item will get kicked out. And you can see I got it in my hand there. It will get kicked out and placed wherever you were standing when you built the building. Okay, so the last thing to show off, let me swap this around. The last thing to show off is the gazebo. It also replaces blocks, but other than that, the thing to really demonstrate is the middle here is not really defined as air. It's defined as a skip block. So if there any conflict with a solid block, it will replace that solid block. Like these granite will replace anything in its way, but these middle blocks that are air right here were actually defined as a skip block. So we'll see that in action here as I place this down. You can see this bottom piece of wood will get replaced, but the tree in the middle will actually remain intact. And if we flew up there in creative mode, you can see it's still intact up on the top of the tree. Just trust me. Okay, so I'll get my construction receipt, and I'll show off those construction receipts next. So let's start here with the gazebo. I can right click my construction receipt and then come in here. I can hide the building. I can show the building. And you can see everything that was there before the building is put back. I can't guarantee that everything's going to be facing the same direction. Like if that was a chest or a furnace, it might be facing a different direction, and it will certainly be emptied. But like I showed you, they will get dumped when you build the building in the first place. If I were to build some chests in here now and do the hide show, it will also kick the materials out of the chest at that moment. Okay, so let's show it again, and let's say we did not like this look here. We didn't like the granite, so we can right click and we can click on the granite, and it says click a block in your inventory to pick a new material for symbol group C. Let's turn it into obsidian. That looks pretty stylish. Okay, cool. So let's use our first cobblestone house construction receipt to show another feature with teleportation. You can see I teleported all the way down to the cobblestone house. If I wanted to get back to where I was before, I could click on the bed that will exist there now, and the bed will be gone now because I have gone back. I do want to point out that wherever you go, so here we're teleporting to the stone house, I can use any receipt to get back. It doesn't have to be the one that I used it. Okay, so the next thing I guess to show off would be to go into the config file and build, like show you how the layouts work, and we'll change one and see how it affects the in-game. So let's go to the config file, and if you're familiar with a lot of my other plugins, there is a recipe system where there's a recipes section in the config file, and you list the recipe keys that you will have. And then there is a recipe section where you list out each of those keys and then give it some values, like a name, any locales, like here we're supporting German, and then you have to put a section for each one of those locales for the name. Next we have a rows section, which essentially is the shape of the crafting inventory, and then the materials that map to those letters. And then the output should be some sort of placeable object, some sort of placeable block. I picked workbench, but you can pick anything that's a placeable block. You wouldn't want to pick like paper or something because you can't ever set that block down. Okay, so that's the recipes section. It's pretty straightforward. Next you'll see if you want any of those placeable blocks that you made a recipe for to be able to create a building, you need to enter that same recipe key into the structures section, and you have to give it a layout, and you have to give it a mats. Now you can see each one that comes with the plugin has the simple layout, and that is the only layout defined in the config file by default, but each one has its own unique mats mapping. And let's see how that works. If I scroll past the mats first, I'll go to the layouts section, go to the simple layout, and you can see the simple layout has a symbols section. Any layout that you add to this section needs a symbols section, and it needs a layers section, and then each layer needs its own section in the layer section, and each layer has rows defined, and each row needs its materials defined by letter, and the letters that are in the rows need to match with the symbols in the symbols, and every letter you pick in the rows has to have a mapping up here in the symbols. And then the structures, the mats that they use in the mats section, have to have a letter and material defined for each one of the symbols in that layout. So you can see for the fortress, which is all obsidian, the letter C, L, T, M, and O all use obsidian, but for other shapes there's some more variety. Like the cobblestone, we had some granite running up and down in those vertical columns, and the circle in the middle of granite, and that stone right, the andesite in the middle. So and you can see here we're doing that with the supported data types with a dash at the end of the material name. Okay, so another thing to pay attention to in here is you can reuse layers, and you can reuse rows. So if I want to make this building taller, all I really have to do is grab a layer, and I'll use layer 4 here, and we'll paste this a couple dozen more times to make a much taller building. So now we can see, if I go to reload the server and go back to Minecraft, and we'll take a look in here, you can see the recipe for the mine shaft, which is glass on the top, water bucket in the middle top, glowstone along the outsides of the middle row, TNT in the middle, very middle, and then furnace, crafting table, chest along the bottom. So let's grab those materials and then craft that. So you have furnace on the bottom, crafting table, and chest. And like we said, TNT in the very middle, glass on the tops, water in the middle top, and glowstones on the side of the middle row. Now we have the mine shaft that builds down, but this time it's a height of 34. So let's go to an open spot, say back over here. Pop this into the ground, give it a second, and it builds out, and it's much deeper, as you can see. You can hop all the way down in there, take the water elevator down to the bottom, and maybe there'd be something cool. You know, you run into a cave along the way, or start building yours, and maybe you don't want people to follow you down, so you open up your construction receipt and hide the entire thing. Of course, it's going to get pretty dark in here, but then you could teleport back up to the top, and of course it's still hidden. Next time you want to go back down, you could either just use the teleportation, or of course you could just show the building again, show the structure. And I do want to issue a word of caution here. If you build something that's too big, like you can make this 100 blocks long and tall, there's a lot of data stored in those construction receipts. So if there's too much data, it actually will stop working. It won't crash your server, it won't ruin a chunk or anything like that, but when you try to interact with that receipt, it will kick you from the server temporarily. You can log right back in and you won't have issues logging in, but anytime you click on that receipt or interact with it, it will have an issue. So at that point I recommend walking over to a pool of lava and just tossing it out of your bag. That actually will not have a problem. You can toss it out of your bag without issue. In the future, if you guys really like this whole replacing blocks, reappearing buildings and everything, and you really want huge structures, let me know and I'll work on a release that saves that data in files on the server. But for now, I just wanted everything to be in data in the items themselves. If you guys have any trouble with the layouts and you need some help designing some, let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to help. And in the meantime, enjoy.